So today we're going to do a book review of Shannon Harris's The Woman They Wanted. If you don't know who I am, I'm Suzanne Tidkemeyer. I used to write a column called No Longer Quivering that involved the Quiverful movement and involved the movement that is kind of part of what Harris's church, Sovereign Grace Ministries, was, and sort of kind of not. I wrote about what I call taco churches, totalitarian, authoritative church organizations that are usually high demand and not affiliated with any denomination at all. They're making this up as they're going along, and boy, can you tell. Okay, so when doing this one, reading this book, all I could think of to call it was perfection. Because the woman they wanted was perfect. They wanted a perfect woman. And I got more out of Shannon's recounting of her time than any other so far, one of these books than any other. But it was still hard to read, and it was rough because of the fact that it hit so close to home. I knew a lot of people that would go back and forth from our old church to Sovereign Grace Ministries when they had the opportunity. And you may not know who it was that Shannon was married to. She was married to a guy by the name of Joshua Harris. And you're probably thinking, why does that name sound familiar? Well, it sounds familiar because Joshua Harris, as a young homeschooled man, wrote a book that was taken later as the manual for these homeschooling groups. And that book would be I Kissed Dating Goodbye. That was the book that the entire purity culture was based upon. It was one of the first books on that particular topic. So, Harris's book launches whole horrible thing about purity. And there's nothing wrong with purity or pure, but there's plenty wrong when you make an entire religion around it. It doesn't allow for anything short of friendships at a large distance between the sexes, which is wrong. I enjoy having male friends as much as I enjoy having my female friends. Since coming out, in those days, I would have said to any man that approached me that wanted to be friendly, I'm sorry, but I can't do that because that would dishonor my husband. It was part of that whole dumbass thing. So Josh came out a few years ago, maybe a little more, maybe more like 5, and repudiated his book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, pulled it from sale, just completely firebombed it. And he left Sovereign Grace Ministries. There was a lot that went down. And he and Shannon ended up getting a divorce. So, how did Shannon get into this in the first place? Well, Shannon joined their church, Sovereign Grace Ministries, as a woman in her early 20s, okay? And she had already lost her virginity to somebody else. Yet she was in this place that started with its hyper purity culture, and they never let her forget that. And I can say how realistic that is because when we were all at my old church, one of the things that was highly talked about was how you met your spouse and how you married him, and how many of us, myself included, did not consult God when we made our pick. Um, she sort of kind of did, but was it sounded like from reading her book that she was genuinely pushed into a marriage with Josh without much options as a courtship model, which is what Josh pushed and they started doing in these types of churches. I know so many people who have been married under courtship only that ended up just kind of broken on the tines of it. It's not a good way to go about having a marriage. And it's all about perfectionism. I put on makeup today for this interview because I want this review because I wanted you to see the kind of ridiculous false thing that was pushed on all of us there. If I was really doing it right, I would have done my hair and worn non clothing that didn't end at my thigh and had sleeves because they had crazy ideas, okay, about purity, what that looked like, and everything had to be perfect all the time. As a wife, you had to be absolutely 100% perfect. So in this book, Shannon struggles to do that. She balances the 10 million things you have to do if you are a wife in this kind of culture, in this high demand religious organization. And she ended up in a familiar place that many of us that experience this end up in, broken, broken at the bottom, just not even going to church anymore, being pretty much cut off from the entire thing. Shannon also talks about some of the other women in the church trying to put major pressure on her to come back to church and live the perfect Christian wife life. And Shannon wasn't capable of that. That's something I've seen again and again and again, that you suddenly reach a breaking point and you end up broken at the bottom. The people don't understand. They just say, oh, Jesus harder and do this and do that. Shannon's journey took her away from Sovereign Grace Ministries, which had a lot of problems that her and Josh left. And eventually it ended up with her leaving Josh and divorcing him and finding her own happiness again, finding the things she loved and finding herself on the West Coast, which is very different than East Coast, left coast, right coast. You know, when you end up in left coast, it can be very, very different. And like I said, I knew a lot of people that went to Sovereign Grace. I kind of sort of kept up to what they were doing through the years, through the people I know that had family members there and that went themselves on the regular. And I'm not totally surprised that Shannon and then later Josh had complete burnout and turn around from everything that they were taught. It happens. It happens because the whole non denominational, high demand religious organization thing is not a sustainable model for anything. And it's not faith and it's not Jesus. It puts a fake mask, and this is a fake mask I'm wearing right now. I've got makeup on. It's the wrong shade for my skin, obviously. And I don't know how to do all the crap that Tati Westbrook and others do with the contouring and stuff. I mean, with me, you get the basics, and that's it. But even that, you were expected to be that way. You were expected to be beautiful as you could be, to be well groomed all the time, to have your hair, your face, everything done. Even though you're supposed to be modest and not prideful at all, you're required to live like that. Damn, I'm gonna have to take this off immediately. I don't know how I did this. How did I do this for years? How did I do this with my severe allergies and not look at all the makeup and the crap on this and not just completely lose it? I don't wear this stuff anymore at all, more than a quick coat of powder and lipstick every now and then, and that's going to be the most for me. Why? Because I got rid of the mask. I got rid of the masks I was living under as a woman in that particular realm. And Shannon has built herself a life, it sounds like, by the end, that was a real, genuine, authentic life where she was able to take her mask off and be who she was without some man dictating. Because that was the thing about the book. It exposes the ridiculousness of the whole patriarchy culture. Patriarchy allows men to be weak, whiny little son of a guns while claiming they're the most masculine guys on the planet, while women have to pick up the slack and do everything else. It kills us. We have breakdowns. We leave as a result many times, or we go back to something even worse. Please don't do that. Find your happiness. Run from all this nonsense. It's just an utterly unsustainable way to live. I love you guys. Thank you for watching. These are just my opinions after reading the book. It's what struck me. And don't bully anybody connected to anything to do with YouTube. Now I'm going to make a second video, but only because I didn't want to mix content. because this is the real content. The other thing is just some smack talking, and I don't want to mix that crap. So I'll see you guys later. I'll have 2 videos today for that reason. Hopefully, they will be short.